Hello. I mentioned ages ago that I would be doing some more recordings to put up on YouTube. And now that I'm doing the researching for book 2 of the Zambezi Trilogy, I'm having to reread book 1 in order to make sure that I get all the continuity right. Because it's so easy to forget a little thing that you said in book 1 that really needs to be carried out again in book 2. So in the process of reading book 1, I thought, well, I'm going to record not everything, but just little excerpts, because there are so many people, particularly in Zim, who have just loved following all these stories, but are not able to get hold of a copy of the book. Print book is certainly out in both Zimbabwe and South Africa, but even the online one is difficult for a number of people to get. So here we go. I'm going to just read just little excerpts from each chapter as we go through. And then in that process, by the time I get to the end of it, I should have made copious notes about exactly how to follow through everything that's happening in book 2. And I can really start getting to grips with book 2, which starts with UDI and ends with Lancaster House. So it's going to be a very busy schedule. I will also be using accents, because when you tell stories, you have to get into the character somehow. My accents are not perfect, so please excuse me, particularly the Scots one I find very hard. So forgive me if I get the accents completely AWOL, but I hope that you'll get sufficiently bound up in the story to want to continue. So here we go with the prologue. And the prologue is introducing Prune, one of the 4 characters that run right through the whole trilogy. As the child broke free of her body, the young girl was shocked into consciousness, to a hospital bed, and the worried face of a nurse, a Murungu, a white person. Tlalapasi told me, "Stay quiet, young girl. Your baby has come." The nurse gently laid the child on her chest, but I'm sorry, he has not breathed. The girl was glad. She sighed in acceptance, a sigh that did not stop. On and on, weaker and weaker. She slipped down into the blessed relief of nothing. Sister MacLeod, immaculate in her starched triangular headpiece, had allowed herself a few precious seconds to wonder about this young black girl. Who was she? How did she get here in the baking heat of October to lie gasping in pain on the blood-red cement steps of the school clinic? So remote from any population centre. Where was her family? Her husband? Or, as she was so young, more realistically, her boyfriend? Sister MacLeod looked at her matted hair. There'd been no time for vanities for this girl. As she turned her over to wash her down, she saw there was no itiolo, the knob of hair that signified she was a married woman. There was nothing more that the Scottish nurse could have done to stem the angry hemorrhage, betraying some savage mutilations from previous scarring, made worse by the rips and tears of this precipitate birth. She'd felt the pulse weaken and fade, watched the traumatized face smooth into stillness. She prayed briefly, "Lord, who knows the reason for all things, look after this young girl and give her peace." She busied herself with the after-death procedures until something caught her attention. She turned to see, in growing astonishment, a feeble movement from the impossibly tiny and wrinkled grey infant. "Quick, nice one." She turned to the orderly next to her. "Bring me something to put this baby in. He's alive." She clasped and snipped the umbilical cord and went through the motions of weighing and cleaning up the wrinkled folds of the very premature. "I could only find this, sister." Nyson rushed back, proffering a worn but clean shoebox with a nice laundered tea towel from the kitchen. They caught the baby's flailing arms, wrapped him tightly, and put him in the shoebox. Oh, the poor wee thing. Only 1.5 pounds. He has little chance. You can take the first milk from the breast, like this, Nison said. The sister didn't believe it would be possible, and yet the girl could have been in labour for days, allowing some colostrum to come down. Between them, they were able to extract a tablespoonful from the still warm young mother. Oh, he'll probably die, but good Nison, that'll bring him some comfort. She dripped the milk between the baby's lips. 2 days later, the child was still alive. A week later, he was stronger and beginning to lose that just-born greyness, turning a deep, healthy brown. Nobody knew who the girl had been. She was not from around. She had nothing on her that you could tell about anything. The only clue to her identity was a cheap bracelet with Rosie inscribed on it. They were not allowed to bury her until there was some identification, so that all the Amandebele ceremonials could take place. So she was ritually washed with water containing crushed unsuzwan, a traditional lemon-flavoured herb, then placed in a bath of ice. More water was prepared, freshly fragrant, with different herbs for mourners to wash themselves. Nobody came. Sister MacLeod took photographs with her box brownie and sent them off to the school lorry to be developed in Bulawayo. A week later, she drove for 10 hours there and back to collect them. She drove carefully, nursing the unpredictable antiquity of the clinic's bull-nosed Morris back to the government office in Chilocho to see if they could throw any light on who the girl might have been. Having heard the story, Native Commissioner Angus Davidson promised to come up to the clinic the next day. She was always glad to see his jovial presence in the clinic. His handlebar moustache and ready laugh made him a very popular figure. His understanding of the history and culture of the Amandebele people and his ability to speak their language so fluently gained him great respect. "What do you think, Nison?" Angus asked. "I think the child is Igola, illegitimate or a bastard, living in a home where he does not belong, without a father, without a chief." "Yes, I think you're right. The girl is so young. I think her father has not yet been paid his lobola, his bride price. I'll circulate the photograph to all Native Commission offices in Matabeleland and Mashonaland too." He turned to Sister MacLeod. "Can I see the child?" They walked into the storeroom, which was now a makeshift nursery. To his amazement, the baby was still in the shoebox, tightly wrapped in a clean tea towel. "Babies like to feel secure, and he's so small. We had nothing better to put him in." Angus peered at the gnarled little face, surprised by the baby's lusty cries. "Poor little fellow, so dark and wrinkled. He looks just like a prune." He smiled, for it was true. He should not yet have been born. "I estimate he was about 26 weeks gestation," Sister MacLeod volunteered. "Well, he has problems. If we can't find the father, he'll not have a totem, and that will disadvantage him all his life." "Could I adopt him?" asked Sister MacLeod. "I've grown very fond of the little chap. He's so determined to survive, despite everything." "I don't see why not," replied Angus. "But to be fair to him, he must be brought up as an Amandebele boy." "Nice one," said Sister MacLeod. "If I adopt him, I will make sure he gets cared for, he has clothes, education, and anything else he needs. Could you take over his training as an Amandebele boy?" "Yes, I could, sister. But we don't know if he's Amandebele or Mashona. If we do it wrong, that could bring much trouble in the future. But," he paused and reflected, If he will be my son too, I would like him to be called after my father, Vusimuzi. Angus nodded. As far as finding out about him is concerned, let me take care of that part and see if we can identify the mother and hopefully this little chap's father too. If you two look after him in the meantime, and we still have no identification in 3 months' time, I'll draw up formal papers for adoption for you, sister, and to give you a legitimate place in his life, a guardianship deed for you, nice one. As he walked back to the NC's office, Angus pondered the life ahead for this premature baby with so little going for it. The chances of finding out who his mother was were very slim. She'd been wearing ordinary barter tackies that most people wore, and a homemade maternity dress with slightly unusual pattern and style. It was likely she'd bought it secondhand or perhaps even been given the dress. A photograph in the Bulawayo Chronicle might just help, if only the newspaper was in colour. And so, Prune got his name, and he got his home, and he adopted his guardian's totem as an Amandebele boy. Most important, in the establishment days of this, the youngest of Britain's colonies, he got a certificate, date of birth, October the 12th, 1939. Mother unknown, father unknown. He grew up in the halflands of white and black, but in their wildest imaginings, nobody present that day could have foreseen the convoluted twists and turns that would take this little boy into his country's history. There ends the prologue to The Horns, which is book 1 of Zambezi Trilogy. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the series. I'll try and get one out every Friday, and we should end up with probably 20 little excerpts right through the book. Thank you for joining me.